back to the And Also podcast. My name is Madison. I am the host of the show, and this podcast is all about grief, mental health, healing trauma, and all things being a person. Welcome. So today's episode is a little impromptu. It's an idea I got last week, and I want to do a few episodes like this. I'm actually going to be doing one like this with my boyfriend, Jake. So stay tuned for that if you're interested at all. But today's episode is going to be me playing the We're Not Really Strangers self-reflection game with myself. And I figured this would be fun to do like with my boyfriend, like the couples edition, the relationship edition. There's like a friendship edition. So maybe I'll have on my best friend and we'll do the friendship edition. There's a family one. Maybe I'll have on a family member. So I thought that would be a fun little thing to do. So keep your eyes peeled for more episodes featuring We're Not Really Strangers. Wish it was sponsored. If you're watching, you know where to find me. But before we get into a big dose of self-reflection, let's start off with our drink of the day because it is like 90 degrees outside and I am very thirsty. I am so obsessed with this drink. I literally cannot get enough of it. You need to know about it. This is the Waterloo, and mind you, I think you guys know I don't love seltzer. It has to be a very specific flavor and it has to be like slightly room temperature. So this I threw in the fridge like maybe 20 minutes ago. It's a little cool, but it's not freezing cold. This is the Waterloo Raspberry Nectarine sparkling water. It is so good. I cannot get enough of it. It is so good. Most seltzers are just a little too plain for me, but this one, I mean, it is so good. You can actually taste the flavors, but it's really good. And I want to mix matcha with this. Like this with matcha would be everything. This would also be really good mixed with cold brew. You guys know I love my sparkling cold brew. It would be good in some cocktail drinks as well. It's just like such a great base, I feel like, for a lot of different drinks. So there's that. And then before we get into the episode, we have one more thing, our book of the week. So let's get into it. So I wanted to pick a book that had to do with self-reflection as we're doing today. So something to kind of relate to that if you're in a very self-reflective, introspective era. I wanted to pick a book that you could kind of pair with that journey. And so I chose I Am a Strange Loop by Douglas Hofstadter. I Am a Strange Loop by Douglas Hofstadter. This book is really good. At the beginning of the synopsis of the book, it says, "What do we mean when we say I? Can a self, a soul, a consciousness, and I arise out of mere matter? If it cannot, then how can you or I be here? If it can, then how can we understand this baffling emergence?" So really, it's kind of a philosophical take on the meaning of I and what can depict the formation and the execution of the I throughout the lifespan of somebody. The idea of I and how I is a strange loop in the brain where symbolic and physical levels feed back into each other. So it's a very philosophical take on the concept of I or the self. And if you like philosophy, if you like deep self-reflection, definitely check this one out. I wouldn't say that this is like a super easy philosophical read. It's definitely not as complicated as like Jean-Paul Sartre, but it's definitely not like, oh, I'm just gonna like sit down and read this in a day. Like it's a little bit more convoluted than that. So definitely beware of that if you're gonna read it and you're not super into overcomplicated philosophical writing. It can definitely translate that way for some people. So anyways, that's the book. Now let's get into today's episode. Okay, so I think the best way to do this is literally just pull a card and talk about it. That's kind of the point of this deck. So if you are not familiar with We're Not Really Strangers, they've got tons of different card games, not even necessarily games, but they're kind of like deep question games. There's the original We're Not Really Strangers game that kind of helps you get to know somebody in a really deep way. There's different editions. There's breakup editions. There's relationship expansion packs. There's one about sex. There's one about intimate relationships. There's one about couples, best friends, family, kids. This one is self-reflection, and basically they're just questions to ask yourself and reflect. And I like to go through these if I'm ever kind of feeling in a rut with myself. Let's just start pulling cards. I'm going to shuffle these up because I have done some of these before. So, are any of my insecurities hurting anyone else by accident? 1,000,000% yes. On the outside, I feel like a lot of people think I'm super confident because, I get online and I talk about anything and everything that's ever happened to me. I'm a super open book. I am not afraid to put myself out there, but I actually do think that a lot of my confidence comes from being incredibly insecure and trying to mask that to the outside world. And so the people that actually know me very, very personally know that I am a raging ball of insecurity and fear and anxiety at all times. And I think the people that impacts the most first is my boyfriend, because, it's always the trope of the person that loves you the most in this life, they see so much in you and they see all of the beautiful parts of you, just as I see in him, right? But then if he struggles with insecurity, I'm like, how could you say that? You're literally perfect and I love you and you're amazing. And I think it's the same way with him towards me. He will say, I look so beautiful, blah, 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 or I'm so smart, or he loves spending time with me. And then I just combat that with, I suck, I'm dumb, my outfit looks stupid, I hate my haircut. I'm so insecure on so many levels. And of course that impacts somebody who sees me as just being a wonderful person. I think it also comes into play with a lot of my friends. My anxiety comes to the surface so quickly with anything. I can't go out and have a night of drinking and be normal. I can't do much without being riddled with anxiety. I know somebody who sees this a ton in me is my youngest sibling, Sid. Every time we do something together, I wind up being overtaken by extreme anxiety, and of course it impacts our time that we're able to spend together, and that sucks. Yeah, I actually, to be quite honest with you, never really think about how it impacts other people because I get so wrapped up in my own insecurity and my own with all of that. I think it's definitely important to keep in mind how these things might impact other people, because that could actually help us grow and help us make change and become better to ourselves. This is a wild card. What feels impossible today that would shock me to accomplish in a year? What feels impossible today that would shock me to accomplish? Going back to school. I want to do it so bad. A lot of you who know me know that my school journey is not over. I would love to go back to school literally tomorrow. I miss being in college. I miss learning in a classroom environment. Unfortunately, college is so expensive, and it's not just you can drop everything and go to college when you have a life to sustain and you live on your own and you pay all of your bills. But ultimately, it's something I would love, love, love to do. And then another thing that comes to mind with this question is my podcast growing and making this some sort of even just part-time income. It feels so impossible because I feel like the world of podcasting is so oversaturated. But I think with the determination I have to talk about difficult things and share experiences and share stories and grow in my grief experience, that it is possible that this podcast could grow. So, okay, next question. What's the best gift I can give myself in this chapter of my life? I think I can give myself more love and more kindness. I'm really mean to myself. I think most of us are. We're super judgmental towards ourselves. We hold ourselves to ridiculously high standards. At least for me, I never feel like I'm doing enough to ever be proud of. And I think sometimes it would be so beneficial for my mental health if I could just sit back and tell myself that I did a good job or that I should be proud of myself. And not just say it to say it, but truly fundamentally understand that everything I'm doing in my life is such a huge accomplishment given the things that I have been through over the past year or two. My life flipped upside down last year. Regis died. I went through a breakup with someone who I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, who basically, he told me I could stay an extra month on our lease so I could find a job. And then he retracted that at the last moment because he found somebody new that he wanted in his life that was not me while I was still living in our apartment. I had to rush and move out of the city because I didn't have any more time to find a job. I graduated college. My heart was literally destroyed. I had to move back in with my parents. It was a really dark time. And to see where I am today now, fully successfully running my own freelancing business, having my own apartment, literally just had an apartment in Brooklyn and in upstate New York, was maintaining 2 apartments somehow, getting incredible opportunities through my job, finding myself again, maintaining the most healthy relationship I've ever been in with somebody who loves and respects me and is so kind and caring, rebuilding old relationships with old friends, letting go of toxic energy in my circle, in my life that I don't need. I should be so proud of myself to be where I'm at, given what has happened. You know, losing Regis to suicide, dealing with the trauma of that, still graduating college, like, oh my God, so much stuff that I need to stop and congratulate myself for. So I need to be kinder. I need to be more patient and loving with myself because I've been through a lot. As you guys know, if you watch my podcast on a regular basis, I deserve kindness from myself. Everybody else gives it to me. Everybody else says that I'm doing a great job and that they're proud of me and that, you know, they're really thankful for my podcast, for me talking about grief, all this stuff. And then I can't even see it myself. So I just need to be nice to myself. Okay, next question. Who do I feel most myself around and why? 3 people come to mind for me. One is my youngest sibling, Sid. Literally because we are actually best friends. Like, I don't even want to get into it because I will start sobbing, but there's nobody in this world that has inspired me more to be myself. I don't think I've ever worn a mask in front of Sid, at least now in like our adult years. I feel so lucky to have a sibling relationship that is like literally built-in best friends. It is the greatest thing. The other person is my best friend, Andrew, who, crossing my fingers, will be on the podcast soon-ish. I can be the most emotionally vulnerable with him. He's been my friend since I was 16. We met my first semester of college when I was 16. So I was like this little baby. I skipped my senior year of high school to go to college early because I was really struggling in high school, and met Andrew, and we had some classes together. We just slowly became friends over the year, and now he is somebody who, like if I ever got married, he would be the officiator. If I die before him, he will be reading the eulogy at my funeral. He is somebody who I not only look up to as somebody to aspire to be like and to learn from, but he truly has taught me so much about living a meaningful life, and I don't even think he necessarily knows that. I always say to everyone, like, you need an Andrew in your life. Like, he is just one of the great, like, he is somebody that, you know, people search their whole lives to meet in terms of friends. And then the third person is Jake. I mean, Jake is like literally these 3 people, like, they're all my best friends in so many ways. But having a partner that I can actually be myself with and not have to shrink myself down into a box has been the most incredible thing. He is so incredibly funny and goofy and silly, and so that allows me to let those parts of myself out, but he can also be super serious and empathetic and an incredible listener. I cannot say enough good things about him. Like, I could actually cry thinking about it because I feel like I've spent a lot of time in relationships with people who very much drained me and kind of forced me to be a shell of myself. My last relationship before Jake was so draining. It's no shade, no tea to the person I was dating. You know, they were going through their own set of struggles, and I completely see that and hear that. But it was one of those things where it was taking a toll on my well-being and my mental health, and it was causing me to not be the best version of myself. It was causing me additional stress on top of everything else I was dealing with. Now being in a healthy relationship with someone who sets boundaries and someone who cares about how his words, his actions, his experiences impact me is so treasured. He's just wonderful, and I can actually be myself, and I can actually be this very deeply emotional person and share these really wild inner thoughts that I have that I feel like no one will understand. I can share them with him. I can also be like a complete baby. Like, I can just be stupid and silly and have a good time and completely let loose around him. I love that. I have never felt so many walls of myself come down in a romantic partnership before. In past relationships, I actually found myself just putting those walls up around myself because I was afraid to be vulnerable because of the reaction I had got when I tried to. So with him, it's just like, girl, live, laugh, love. I love you for who you are, and that is so amazing. Ooh, what is my most toxic trait I can admit to, and where do I think it stems from? I have so many toxic traits. So I think one of my toxic traits is like over intellectualizing everything to my detriment, to other people's detriment. Sometimes I just don't need to be super deep, and I just find myself over extrapolating everything, and it's just not helpful, and it can actually be really hurtful in some cases. So that's one thing. It's very toxic, even just for my own, my own mental health. Another thing that's toxic for me is judgment. Judging people, I feel like, growing up in an environment where judging people is normal, I feel like a lot of us kind of experience that in our childhoods, and I'm not blaming anybody. Human beings are very judgmental. It's hard not to be sometimes, but I think being judgmental, I'm like actively trying to not do it, at least not to the extent. I think there's some cases where being judgmental is like fair, and then there's some cases where it's like a projection, and this is most cases of being judgmental are just a projection of inner insecurities. And so I need to, instead of being judgmental about somebody, when I find myself doing that, I need to really look deeper and figure out, why do I care? Why am I so fixated on something somebody else is doing? And honestly, I think all this stuff just stems from childhood. I think that's where a lot of our learned traits, be it good or bad, that's where they come from. So this is a really good question. I encourage you all to ask yourself what your most toxic trait is. Ooh, okay, this is a good one. What have I tolerated from people in the past that I no longer have space for? I would love to hear what you guys have tolerated in the past that you no longer have space for, because this is one of the biggest things we can learn from in our patterns as people in relationships with other people. I have tolerated so much from people unnecessarily for my entire life, and I'm at a point where I do not have time to tolerate certain things. One of those things is people who expect me to mother them, especially men. I will never, ever, ever in my life be in a relationship with someone ever again who expects me to pick up after them, to remind them that they have somewhere to be at a certain time, to wake them up in the morning, to tell them that they need to do their dishes, to tell them that their laundry is overflowing, then to start doing that stuff for them because they don't do it. I cannot do that. I was in a relationship with somebody who I essentially felt like a caretaker of. It felt super immature. It felt like my potential was being wasted because instead of going out and doing shit with my friends, I was at home cleaning up after some guy who couldn't get off video games. And once again, it is peace and love, but it is also my experience. And my experience has been a really negative one when it comes to men who expect me to be their caretaker. Never again, baby girl. Never again. Another thing I will no longer tolerate is keeping people in my life who blatantly disrespect me. I don't care if I've known you for 10 years. I don't care if you're family. I don't care if I just met you that day. If you treat me with blatant disrespect, you are getting the cut, baby girl. I cannot have you around. I cannot have you wasting my energy. I need to protect my peace, and I think we should all stand on business in terms of this, okay? I have been through too much to let people walk all over me and treat me like a doormat. And this is why I've had to end a lot of relationships in my life because people just blatantly disrespect me. And for a long time, I would make excuses as to why I was to blame and why I should take responsibility, when ultimately, no girl, it's your fault. I'm so sorry about it. That's that on that. Okay, I think I'm going to do two more. We'll do like an unserious one, and then we'll do like a more serious one. This one says, what purchase has meant the most to me recently, and what is a purchase that I could have done without? A purchase that I could have done without is literally all the clothes I've bought. Over the past like 6 months, I have bought so many clothes. Granted, they're all thrifted, so it's not that serious. It's not like I dropped 5 racks on clothes. Did I need them? No, definitely not. Did I want them? Hell yeah, I did. And I feel like a baddie in some of these outfits, okay? A purchase that has meant the most to me recently, Okay, I have two. One is all my podcast equipment because I feel like I worked really hard and this was really a gift to myself to be able to bring the podcast home to my apartment and to have trust in the equipment that I use and give you guys really good production quality. So that has made me happy. Of course, it's a work in progress, but it's definitely worthwhile. And the other one is I got Jake a golf tracking GPS watch. I don't know. It's like some watch that people who play golf wear and it helps them like measure all their stats. And I've really truly never seen such a big smile on his face. He is so happy about it, so excited about it. And it just made me really happy that he loved it so much. So it was totally worth the money. I love seeing him happy. Okay, I want to do two more because I really like this card and I like to talk about music. What's my favorite song at the moment and why do I love it so much? It's called Caffeine Rivers, and oh my god, this song is truly the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life. I could listen to it over and over again. I love singing it. I think it is so beautiful. The lyrics are so incredibly written. It's so poetic. It's inspiring. It's the story of like the falling in love and the distance and the what is going on and the falling back together, and just it's so human. The song is so human experience coded, and I actually cannot stop listening to it. So I encourage you to listen to it, period. It's really good. So I would love to hear your favorite song too, if you have one at the moment. But really, truly, this song, like, it actually changed my brain chemistry. Like, ever since I've heard it, it plays in my head 24/7. I had to learn it on my piano. I had to learn it on my guitar. I had to learn every possible harmony that I could put into the song. So good. What have I outgrown recently and what am I growing into? This is going to be the last one. Recently, I have outgrown all of my previous life desires. And by recently, I mean over the past year or two. What I used to want for myself, I no longer identify with. That whole process has been incredibly challenging. I think I should actually make a whole episode on changing life paths and changing careers and, you know, this thing you always wanted, no longer wanting it and shifting into something new. I should make an episode on that because, I experienced that a lot. And what am I growing into? I'm growing into my desire to build a life around my experience with grief and death. I knew that this would happen. I knew that I would seek career, seek meaning, seek life experiences that align with the experience of death and grief and empathy and care. I just didn't think it would happen so soon. So that's what I'm growing into. Hence why I am here talking to you on a podcast that is basically all about grief and mental health. More to come on my career shifting and changing. There's a lot happening. All right, guys, so that's really it for this episode. I feel like I could play this game with myself forever, but I want to save some cards for future episodes. So if you liked this concept and you enjoyed learning a little bit about me, definitely subscribe, give this video a like, and I would love to hear some of your answers to these questions too, because I think self-reflection is an underrated tool to have in our toolkit, toolbox, tool bag. I think we should all be doing it more. And I think the more we are kind of on our phones and wrapped up in an online digital world, the less we're kind of looking inwards. We're almost projecting a lot of our stuff outwards and comparing to other people when we should really be just looking at our experience, looking at our bias, reflecting from a very interpersonal standpoint. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, thank you so much for watching the video version if you are on YouTube, and be sure to rate the show on streaming platforms, subscribe on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. All of your support means the absolute world to me. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love all of you, and I will see you in next week's episode. Bye, guys.